Hey everybody, and welcome back. When I shoot these videos almost every week, what they really are is a little bit of an insight into what's going on here at GR Research. You're kind of getting to see what we really do here and what I do on a daily basis. Sometimes I'm working on upgrades on products that have been sent in. Sometimes I'm working on some of our own products. Sometimes I do videos and I talk about some of our new products that we're working on or new products we've developed or something like that. And sometimes it's more of a tech talk style video. And again, sometimes it's upgrades to whatever people send in. And we basically just work on whatever comes in the door. We don't look for speakers to upgrade. That's not what we do. And so sometimes I have people getting upset with us or getting upset with me because I'm telling it like it is. Sometimes when something comes in and it's bad, I'll say that it's bad. And when it's good, I'll say that it's good. And I've had people say, you're just bashing these other companies' products in order to sell your own products. If you think about it, that's not what I've done in any of these videos. I never set up another company's products or another company's product and compare it to our product and bash some other company's product in order to sell my product. We don't ever do that. There are times that I've had so many speakers in here from other companies that I'll compare speakers from other companies and let you guys look at how those speakers compare to each other. But you've not seen me go head to head with another company's product and start bashing some other company's products. It just doesn't work that way. That's not what I do. What you're really getting to see is specifically, how did that company's products measure? If it's bad, I'm going to say it's bad. And if it's good, I'm going to say it's good. And in this case, I'm going to do a little bit of both. And I'm actually going to compare some product today. I'm going to compare this Wharfedale Denton model that was sent in for an upgrade to another Wharfedale model that we worked on a year or more ago that was the Wharfedale Diamond 9.1. So what I'm going to do is compare the same company product to product, and it's almost the same price point. Now, before I do the comparison, let's look at this model. And this model, it's kind of a throwback to old school design. It's got that old school look on it, the grill and the way the grill fits on and the frame around it and everything. It kind of has that old school vibe. It's kind of like a mini Linton, I think that's what it was called, which is their bigger old school model. This is like the little old school model. And yeah, it has some diffraction issues and things going on. And it had some issues with the grill, but it wasn't as bad as this. Box was, fairly well made, and it looks nice. It does have dual ports on the back and some dual binding posts. If I remember right, I think some of the nuts on the binding posts were steel, which is not good. Now the ports are small, and as you can see, I've got wiring hanging out the port still. This is how we design a network for a speaker. When we look at something and we know it's a disaster, we're not going to fix this, let's start over. What I'll do is I'll connect tweeter out with one set of cables and the woofer out with another, and I'll take measurements of the drivers independently. And from what I'm seeing on the drivers, I'll design a filter and build it as I'm watching the response and how it reacts. And I'll look at the time arrival, and I'll do things to the filter to shift phase and do things to it to control peaks and resonances and things like that. So I'm back and forth looking at what's going on and putting parts on it and kind of designing on the fly. Now, while I've got this thing turned around, I will say that these ports on the back are way too small for this speaker. When we run a bass note through this thing, say a 30, 40 hertz note, even a 50 hertz note, the air velocity out of these things are significant, and it's got the, whale fart sounds going on. It's bad. And, of course, it did have cheesy parts inside. I mean, it's got one air core inductor, but it looks like it's got a steel screw holding it to the board right here, which makes it no longer an air core inductor. There's going to be some effect from that, and it will affect the value. There are iron core inductors in the woofer circuit. There's electrolytic capacitors on the board. There's some little polyester type capacitors on the board. There's sand cast resistors. I mean, it's the cheapest stuff that you expect. It's stuff at this price point. And in the old Diamond 9.1, it also had some cheap stuff. So let's look at the raw measurements on this thing first, and then we're going to go and do a little bit of comparisons. Let's just look at the frequency response measurement that I took with the grill off. Man, it's rough. It's rough. In this case, this is when it's bad, and I'm going to say it's bad. That woofer has a horrendous peak, and it's quite a bit louder than the tweeter level. It's like a 5 dB peak, and the phase relationship is not great right there as it rolls into the tweeter, and there's just a hole there. It's awful. It really is. So I put the grill on. Now the grill has a little bit of a radius on the inside edge, so they're doing a little something to minimize diffraction. And once I put the grill on, let's look at the measurement there of the crossover and the each individual driver with the grill on. And as you can see, it's a lot better. The tweeter's response especially is smoother with the grill on. And then here's a measurement I took grill on, grill off. You can see the difference there. It definitely looks better with the grill on. Looking at the vertical off axis going up and up, it definitely drops out at the crossover point. It becomes less in phase as you go up. And the horizontal off axis, it drops off fairly evenly in the horizontal off axis, but it's just the on axis is so rough, it's a disaster. Spectral decay shows that the drivers dissipate stored energy pretty cleanly. There's a little bump there at the lower woofer's response, and it could be a reflection internally, not enough insulation causing that to drop and then come back up. Impedance curve shows it's a 4 ohm speaker. Now, let's make some comparisons. And one of the first things I did was of course shoot the drivers independently, and let's look at what happened here. Let's look at the woofer's response, and let's look at the tweeter's response. You can see the tweeter has quite a big peak at the bottom, but the level of the rest of it is not real high. It is low, and that's the reason it's low, when they're summed. It just doesn't have much output. The woofer's response looks like crap, to be honest with you. And I'm going to compare it. Let's leave the woofer's response up there, and let's look at the response of the raw drivers that I measured in the Wharfedale Diamond 9.1. Let's throw that up there. That's a similar size mini monitor speaker, and it's kind of the same price range. But look at the woofer's response. Look how much smoother the response is of the woofer compared to the one in this speaker. I'm thinking, Wharfedale, come on. What's going on here? What are you doing? Why would you allow the use of this woofer when you've got better woofers you could use? You used a better looking woofer there in the Diamond 9.1. Granted, some of it may be caused by some of this diffraction, but come on, man. That's a bunch to have to correct for. Now, when I did the Diamond 9.1, I directly compared it to a Revell model that was $4,000. And in comparing them, I really liked the drivers better in the Wharfedale. And I realized it had what I call good bones. It had something I could work with. And I designed a new network for it. Let's look at the Wharfedale 9.1. Let's look at it before, and it was not that bad. It was not that bad. There was a little roughness in the tweeter's curve, and it was a little down in output at the tweeter end, but overall, it was okay. The spectral decay looked real clean. So I thought, hey, if I can straighten out this tweeter, this is going to turn out really well. And here's what it looked like when I was done. I was able to put a notch filter on that tweeter. I was able to bring the top end of the tweeter back up and made it create a smooth roll-off. I was able to blend it well with the woofer, and the phase relationship was fantastic. I remember going up vertically on that little 9.1, and the response hardly even changed. It maintained a great phase relationship over a really wide range, and the spectral decay was really clean. It was great on that little model. And I said I would pick that over the $4,000 Revell. Once these things are upgraded, that it would outperform and it would sound better. And a lot of people got all upset with me for saying that, but it was true. And I even had, and I've mentioned this one time before, I had a guy that owns Wilson Audio Speakers. It's a big pair of Wilson Audio Speakers. And he contacted us and said one of his buddies brought over the Wharfedale Diamond 9.1 that had been upgraded with our complete upgrade package. And he admitted that the little Wharfedale sounded better than his Wilson Audios in every way except for dynamics and bass extension. And that had to be pretty humbling because that's a lot more expensive speaker. But that little speaker was that good. And it was small, so it didn't have a lot of surface reflection. It didn't have any issues like this thing does. And it had good, well-controlled drivers, and we put really good quality parts on there, good wiring, tube connectors. I mean, we loaded it with parts that were going to allow the signal to transfer cleanly without disrupting it or smearing it. And the result was fantastic. For a little mini monitor with upgrades, that one was great. It had good bones. This one, oh my goodness. Come on, Wharfedale. Like I said, I'm going to say when it's good, and I'm going to say when it's bad. And when you do a good job, I'm going to say you did a good job. And when you do something like this, I'm going to say, man, what are you thinking? Let's look at what I was able to do with this thing. So, had to put quite a notch filter on that woofer to get that peak out of it. So, that was something a little, it took a few parts, not a lot of parts, but there are 6 parts on that woofer. So, and it needed it. Let's look at the original crossover response and then what we were able to do with it. And as you can see, much smoother, much more balanced. In the woofer, we had to let that thing, we had to kind of force it out there and then pull the top end out of it before it got up into some of that upper region ringing and breakup. So it is what it is. The vertical off axis on this thing, not as great as I would have liked. Sometimes there's things I can do to the crossover, and I'll shift phase in certain regions to try and keep the drivers in phase over a wide region. In this case, because I was having to get so aggressive with the woofer and controlling that peak, there was kind of a limited amount of stuff that I could do to it. So the overall vertical off axis it's still not great, but it is pretty smooth. And I also went in the vertical off axis going down, and in that direction, it maintained a pretty good phase relationship. So if you can stay on between tweeter axis and woofer axis, or if you want to tilt this up a little bit, it may have a little more even in-room response after the upgrade. Horizontal off axis looks okay. Spectral decay now is very clean. All that down at the bottom is gone. We put a little more insulation in there and absorbed some of that. So it's clean across the board. The impedance went from being a 4 ohm load. It's down now to a minimal dip at 3 ohms now. So you're going to have to keep in mind the impedance has dropped a little. So you need a good 4 ohm stable source in order to drive these things. And the reason that impedance dropped is we had to put that notch filter in there and pull that peak down in that woofer's response. We had to do that. There was no way around it. It had a big hump there that needed control. I tried series and parallel notch filters, and the only way to kind of get it to work was to use what we got, and it did work out okay. So that's where we are on that. Let's look at the overall just frequency response, and you can see now that it's pretty flat. It's within just a dB and a half all the way across. And because of the price point of this thing, I didn't want to do a really expensive upgrade package for this thing. I wanted to do an upgrade that was inexpensive. And so we did all JB polycaps in this thing and all air core inductors from US Coils and a set of tube connectors to replace these cheesy binding posts on the back. The whole upgrade came to $315, and that turns this thing into a pretty nice little speaker. And if you want to take it up another notch, if you want to put sonic caps in the tweeter circuit, you're looking at another $186 to add sonic caps to the tweeter circuit. So there you are today. I made a comparison. I told you when it was good. Like I said, I'll say when it's good, but I'm going to say when it's bad too. And this one had some issues, but we were able to straighten this thing out and make something out of it. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.